I'm going to apologize in advance if I start coughing. I'm out of cough drops. That's how bad this cough seems to be. Anyway, so I have tuned the vintage deck a little bit, as you'll see. It's a lot tighter of a list. It's much higher in mana sources, so and I've also adjusted the lands a bit. So I actually have two non-blue lands. I have Plateau and Scrubland in here, and that's so that I could actually run a main deck Tithe because, land drops are just super critical early. I also have Bloodstained Mire over the Wasteland. I put in an extra fetch, um, and Mire will, of course, fetch all of my lands except for the Tundras. So it's the one drawback. I may end up cutting it and just getting another one of the regular old fetch lands here. Technically, the best fetch land for me would be Flooded Strand, since it will fetch all of the lands. But I don't really like having somebody named Flooded Strand with Phyrexian Revoker and then sitting there and dying because I can't use any of my fetches. So anyway, I think it's Revoker, or is it Pithing Needle? Anyway, either way, I don't want that to happen. So I've mixed it up a bit, and the cost is that I cannot get, Bloodstained Mire can get any color, and it can get blue, but it just can't get Tundra. If I have to get white with Mire, I have to go get Plateau. So that's the drawback there. Anyway, so what other changes did I make? I took out Factor Fiction and Thirst because they were actually feeling too slow, which is weird, but I just didn't really feel like I had too many windows to run those cards out. And I took out, and I also added mana to the base. So I added Mana Crypt because I have Gorilla Shaman to eat it. I added Mana Vault, kind of the same reason, but of course both cards are very good, and together they give me enough artifacts. I feel that I was able to add Mox Opal as well. So I feel like the changes make the gameplay a lot smoother with the deck. And I took out some of the gimmicky stuff. I had I was testing out like Notion Thief with Dak Fade and Snapcaster and stuff. I'm just main decking both Humility and Moat rather than running Balance and Swords because there are a number of decks where Moat will just beat them, and if that is not the case, for example, if against the humans deck that has a lot of humans that will deal tons of damage to you from behind a moat, the moat humility combo will certainly crush their hopes and dreams. Basically, it's game over if you put those two cards together. So I can do that. I do not have Enlightened Tutor, of course, to make it easier, but that's because Enlightened Tutor is not very good in most matchups. It's only good in that one specifically. I suppose I could throw it in the sideboard just for that one, but I'd rather just play more of these cards if I were to do that. And Enlightened Tutor just for Crucible in the mirror is or in control matches is pretty much your only target, or maybe Black Lotus occasionally, but it's just not that good. So that's the one tutor I took out. I do have Vampiric and Mystical still. I'm not using Imperial Seal. Mystical is really good because you have Merchant Scroll, so that allows you to Merchant Scroll into Mystical and then Mystical into something like Yawgmoth's Will or Mind Twist if you need to. And um, other than that, I still haven't completed the sideboard either. So the sideboard is four Swords to Plowshares, where there's a lot of decks where Mental Misstep's bad and Swords is good, so you just make that swap. For example, Shops. There's three Disenchants, an extra Mox Monkey, and then the two Red Blast and Pyroblast. Now, technically, what I should have is Pyroblasts. And the reason is that Pyroblast will target things that aren't blue, and that means I can ultimate DAC and use Pyroblast as an instant speed control magic for target permanent. But in most games, if I'm ultimating DAC, I've already won it anyway, so I just don't want to go out of my way to go pick up Pyroblast, but perhaps I should at some point, just for that small additional feature there. And again, 5 open slots on the board. Not really sure what to do with them just yet. Somebody did suggest the Red X Destroy X artifact card, and that might end up replacing the second Gorilla Shaman perhaps. But the thing is, the Gorilla Shaman is not really in there. You bring it in against Shops, but it's actually in the deck for, not them specifically, it's in the deck for combo, for paradoxical outcome decks. So like they have tons of cheap drops, and you have almost as many as they do by running the Crypt and Vault and so forth. So a Gorilla Shaman can just jump into play and just eat their whole board, sometimes in a single turn. But more importantly, even if you only eat, say they've got a few targets right now, the key is it'll continuously, like, they have to get it off the board somehow, and they really don't have an effective way to do that, because they can't really go off with paradoxical outcome when they have nothing to target. So it kind of like locks the game out for them, and so that's why I have the second Gorilla Shaman, because that's a rough match. So against them, there isn't a lot of sideboarding that happens, but bringing in the extra Shaman is definitely one of the swaps. So I will now start some games here for you. I wanted to run through. Somebody's asking about shops, and with this sideboard, it seems to be a fairly decent matchup, and I'll show you that in a moment. So the sideboard swap that happens as of now is that. So 8 cards come in, and then the cards that come out, you take out. Well, at least this is what I've been doing. I take out, and it seems to be working. I take out Mind Twist. I take out. Wow, I guess I should have thought this through. Sorry, I take out the 4 mental missteps and Mind Twist, because it's not about. I mean, they're going to dump their hand. So if you can Mind Twist, then you've. I don't know. You've got so much mana that you're probably going to win the game anyway. So that's my thinking on that one. And I take out 3 other cards, and what are they? I think it's the cheaper tutors. So I take out Ponder. I take out Brainstorm. Yeah, that's what it is. And I take out Mystical Tutor. So I leave in Vampiric and Demonic because I can go fetch Moat against them. I take out Mind Twist because they're going to be dumping their hand. Plus, mana is really tight. Mental Misstep because, as far as I can tell, the only card you can target is Soul Ring. That's not enough to have 4 mental missteps. I take out Ponder, Brainstorm, and Mystical because, well, Mystical is pretty good, but basically you have a redundancy of cards that you're going to be getting, so there's really not that much to Mystical for. And these cheap search spells are not cheap when they're causing them to cost extra mana. So you can't afford, you can't tap, play, say, a 3 mana Ponder and then have 3 extra mana up for your mana drain when they've got a Trinisphere. So you just sit there looking at Ponder all day. So I just cut them. And and then these come in. So let's look at some games now with those sideboards in mind. Also, I leave in Cruise and Dig, however, because they can cheat, around those additional costs. All right. So if we can go to the account. I'm not a master of this format. I used to be. But I am now in learning phase. So I believe, X Funeral Fog X. So you can see I'm having various, a couple of these. So one of these I won actually, but gave up because the guy AFK'd as I was winning, and I just conceded and said to heck with it. One of them I lost because my opponent against Traveler. My opponent just got double vintage draws. He went first turn Oath of Druids with using the land that gives me a creature and Force Will back up. Okay, good for me. And then one of them I lost because it was first turn or second turn Tinker into Blightsteel Colossus, and I went, I guess I lose. So anyway, not very interesting there, but that's going to happen sometimes. I don't know what else I can do besides playing, as many counters as I'm playing to try to deal with that stuff. Otherwise, there just isn't all that much. So anyway, here we are playing against shops, and my opponent gets a Ghost first, plays first turn Thorn. So, and I've got Strip Mine for his Ancient Tomb, but he had the Mulligan, so I'm reading him as weak on mana. And we're about to find out if my read's any good, because if he wastelands me here, my read is bad. Oh my gosh, Workshop into Ravager into nothing? Well, my opponent makes a huge error here and does not wasteland me, and that's pretty much the only chance he's going to get to make an error in this game. I do not understand the thinking here, other than perhaps he was thinking, so he was light on land, and he must have just been thinking that he needed to, bank lands. But now I get to move into mana denial mode, and that's pretty much it, I think. All right, so he missed an attack with Ravager, so if I get to 1, I'm just going to concede this game against him because, it's testing. He was, I think, a little saucy that he didn't use his wasteland, perhaps. I don't really know. All right, so I'm going to continuously hit the mana denial. I drew a Mox Sapphire. That's excellent. Opponent's getting additional lands into play under the sphere effects, but I'm not terribly worried about it. I have a Gorilla Shaman. I have to pause on the wasteland action so I can get Mox Monkey down. Opponent goes Crypt. I guess to pump up Ravager. He should have probably pumped here, but if he had, then I spend 5 mana and kill a Thorn. So he doesn't. Therefore, I go ahead and kill his mana sources. He will, of course, pump Ravager. It's fine. Pump away. I'm going to end step Tutor. So again, my opponent could have done like 3 more damage to me this game, but I go ahead and get Disenchant, so now I can kill his factory before he's able to move counters from Ravager. Not that it would have mattered too much with recurable wastelands. And of course, there's Dak. There's that too. Alright, so I'm going to take another hit, and end of turn, we're going to eat the Thorn, which means Arcbound Ravager is going to eat the Thorn, actually. Alright, so I drew a Mox, which is nice. Let's go ahead and just nosh on that sphere over there, I believe. Yeah, there we go. And with that out of the way, I can play a Mox for the correct price, activate a Strip Mine, and play Dak Faden. I don't even have to use Disenchant, my opponent scoops. So we get to move to game 2. Pretty straightforward win, but only because he chose not to activate his wasteland. I guess had my opponent decided to do the wasteland, like he should have, then in hindsight, of course, then I would have been in deep doo-doo. All right, this is a great hand. Not so great hand, honestly. It has a library. That makes it great, and my opponent has first turn Trinisphere. So opponents had a Thorn or Trinisphere effect each game on turn 1. It's a Tangle Wire, I draw. But of course, this deck is a lot heavier on land than most decks that try to be control decks, so I will have to tap the library down now, of course, and then draw. And you can see here how terrible Ponder is. I don't know why I kept Ponder and Mystical Tutor in and Brainstorm. I could have swore I would have sideboarded. Maybe these games are happening in reverse order. I think that maybe it ordered. Yeah, it might have stacked it incorrectly. I don't know. Well, we'll see. All right, so I get to activate in response to Tangle Wire again, play another fetch, and pass. I'm not actually cracking the fetches, and I throw away, what, Brainstorm? Yeah, Ponder, Brainstorm. Or maybe it was this game that told me why I should pull the Ponder and Brainstorm. All right, opponent finally found an answer for library, but he's really low on cards. All right, so he's going to tap down, and we're going to just keep on playing blue mana. Opponent's tapping his Tangle Wire. Online Tangle Wire, by the way, if you don't know the price, you should look it up. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to tap down the Tundra and leave the fetches untapped. And now I'm out from under the tyranny. So the way the Thorns work with Trinisphere is that each Thorn and Sphere effect, if you're not familiar, adds +1 to the total cost of your spell, and if that grand total of +1/+1 comes under 3, then you have to go up to 3 because of Trinisphere. If the total equals 3 or goes higher than 3, then Trinisphere has no effect. So I actually tutored for Tithe here, and Tithe, as you can see, it can be good. All right, so we're going to keep hitting land drops. Now my opponent has a window to get something going here, and I believe he gets something. Look at that. He named Jace. Kind of awesome. All right, well, I'm going to play on and say go then. Take that. So basically my mana drains cost 4. So that's why I'm not casting a 3-mana Mox. All right, so my opponent had a play, which is yummy for me. Tangle Wire Deliciousness will feed into a Crucible World. So let's get that library back out. Opponent gets a factory. Means a little bit more pressure, but it's real light pressure right now. All right, so I get to draw a card. I'm going to cast a 3-mana Mox. So the Mox is actually 2, and then Trinisphere makes it 3. And then I can play Academy, which now taps for 2. So I can mana drain here. All right, so I did draw a Swords to Plowshares. I go ahead and pay for a Mox Jet, play a land from the graveyard, and pass. Opponent makes another error, but unfortunately, it's one that's just not going to matter much. He could have pumped his factory here for 1 more damage, but it was summoning sick. All right, so now we're into win with white cards mode. I'm going to go ahead and Demonic Tutor here, though, and go ahead and put together the lock with Crucible, taking out one of the factories. Opponent's going to attempt to deal more damage to me, and because Swords to Plowshares answers anything and Strip Mine answers factories, I am not going to do a thing about that. Alright, so we'll leave the Lotus there, and goodbye factory. I'll go ahead and cast myself a Jace now. I don't have to discard. And I +2 it and tuck a Ravager to the bottom of his deck. Jace is actually the win condition in this deck, so although generally speaking it's scoop, but so I have to plus it up to actually win. Opponent plays a Thorn. At this point I have so much mana, I'm just not going to worry about that at all. It's only hurting you, buddy. Anyway, I go ahead and play a Mox here. A Wasteland. I'm going after shops now. Going to play a Mox here just because it's 2 mana sources with Academy, of course, and plus up Jace. And at this point, he gives up. So I say, well, let's try again. It could have been a fluke. Plus, my opponent was maybe a little rusty, made a few mistakes. So hopefully, we'll try again here, and maybe in the second round he will play tighter. And of course, my decisions will be a little bit better since that was literally the first time I played with shops with this deck. I actually win the dice roll, so we get to the die roll, so I get to get down on the table fast. He gets a Ravager. I'm going to go ahead and play a fetch land so I can do the Tithe trick. He wastelands me, so let that resolve. And in response to Sphere, Tithe. So good. Okay. Sphere is down, and then we resolve the fetch land. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. All right, so let's go ahead and Ancestral, and I found a Time Vault, and I decide I'm going to use Time Vault to go ahead and Time Walk, even though I have this Sphere going. I may be able to untap the Vault if I get a window of opportunity to do so. And I thought about doing it right there, but I drew Mana Drain. I was actually thinking I might Will. The problem is with Sphere, Will is so much weaker. Opponent gets a Lotus Strip Mine turn. Hits me for 1 with the Ravager. He probably ought to eat his Sapphire, I guess. Goes for another Sphere, and that will be yummy food for the Mana Drain. He does take out a Tundra here, though, so I float blue. I have a Mox Opal threatening to be more blue. So I really wanted to untap the Mana Vault there, but decide that I'm better off playing Will here. Running out an Ancestral and hoping for a Lotus, which I hit, which means I get to Time Walk from the graveyard. I also played a land from the graveyard, of course. All right, we draw a card, and 1, 2, 3, 4. This looks safe enough. I cannot Mana Drain here, but I feel like there's very little my opponent can actually do that should matter at only 2 lands with the Sphere out, and he seems to agree. So Moat is a big, it's a killer for the Shops deck. The out for them is they get a lot of mana and they play Walking Ballistas and they shoot you in the face. But that's not it's not very effective when you've got Sphere out and only 2 mana sources. So obviously, like, so on my next turn, if he hadn't given up, I would have untapped Mana Vault and played a land and said go. All right, so we're gonna move on to the next game. Yeah, Mana Vault, really good in that game. Certainly glad that I added it back into the deck. Given that it's one of the most powerful cards in the game, it probably makes sense. So I had a questionable hand, so I mulliganed my first hand away. And then I see a Academy on top, and I decide to tuck it because I don't know for sure. I'm looking for something a little more meaningful. My opponent actually mulliganed down pretty hard, and I get first turn Humility, and my opponent gives up. So I think he might have given up a little bit too soon here, but I can kind of understand it. Thing with Humility that's really bad against that deck is that their Ravagers and stuff come into play with counters on them. So they're 1/1s with a 1/1 counter on it. So it's actually like Arcbound Ravager drops into play as a 2/2 with no abilities, which, you know, it's not amazing, but it's can be a problem. I didn't really have the greatest stuff going on here. Now, as it turned out, I think my next card was Demonic Tutor, so I was going to get to Ancestral, but yeah, pretty good. So there's some really fast games against shops. And since we're at it, let's see if I can maybe even try another game here. I don't know, though, because Magic's being very laggy right now. But hopefully enjoyed seeing how the deck would play out, you know, theoretically in this matchup. Um, I could tell my opponent was probably practicing the same as I am. So, you know, against a tougher opponent, obviously the game would also have been tougher and may not have worked out for me there. But let's see here. Can I go to the lobby? Can I do anything? I think Magic is getting too laggy. I think my machine is getting overtaxed. So I'm probably going to go ahead and wrap it up here. In which case, I'll just bring up the deck list one last time and sort it correctly. And yeah, that's it right now. That's where we're at. So hopefully it's interesting for you. That's really strange. The sideboard is acting weird. I will go back to Commander. I'm actually super low, and I have plenty of play points, but I'm super low on tickets. This was a very expensive venture. I'm down to 5 tickets, but I have a lot of play points, so I'll be able to go into Commander hopefully and pick up some more trophies and such, and push my way towards getting a more comfortable situation. But considering basically Commander paid for this whole deck, I'm still pretty happy about that. So anyway, that's all I've got. Hope you enjoyed watching, and thank you very much for checking out the channel. I'll see you next time.